All right, we'll open this meeting. Would the clerk take the roll call, please?
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw. District 3, Karen Brill. District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews. District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Okay. We have quorum. All 7 board members are present. Mrs. Andrews is present by telephonic communication. This final public hearing regarding the 2019-2020 district budget is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to listen to the public regarding the superintendent's proposed budget and millage rates. This is not our first meeting relative to this budget. We have held 4 board workshops on the budget beginning in December 2018 and conducted a public hearing in July. The agenda for this meeting includes adoption of the proposed millage levies and approval of the district budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. Are there any speakers? Yes, we have 2. We have 1 speaker that I know of who wish to address these items. Mr. Katz, President of the CTA.
Good evening, everyone on the board and the superintendent. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I just kind of wanted to take this opportunity before the budget was approved to speak generally about negotiations which are upcoming. We took a hiatus over the summer because when we realized that we were actually in a position to settle the contract early, that state law would prohibit paying the raises until basically December, so it was not necessary to proceed in that manner. We're starting back up on October 2nd and October 11th, or the next 2 negotiation dates, and I wanted to speak specifically to the upcoming salary negotiations. For the past 2 years, the district has been able to muster 2.75 and 3.5% raises based on evaluations in tougher times. Even though the legislature continues to underfund us, this past year's allocation was a noticeable increase over the 47 cents per student or whatever they threw at us last time. With that being said, I figured rather than call each of you because you can't really respond to anything about negotiations, I can certainly talk about them, but why not talk about it to everyone at once in a public setting? That seems like the safest way to do it. So in the past 2 years when the budget was tighter, we were able to muster 2.75 and 3.5%. As we go into negotiations in a couple weeks, I'll say it publicly because teachers ultimately would say it to me after the fact anyway, anything less than what we've been receiving would be a failure on my part to leave my union. That's my position. And even coming in at where we've been over the past couple of years, given the increase in funding from the legislature, would be slightly above a failure, so obviously that's not my intent. So with that being said, we look forward to hearing the district's proposal on October 2nd. In last year's negotiations, and I took heat for this from my members, the district made their initial proposal, and when we countered with a realistic expectation that this is what the district can afford and this is what we feel is good enough given the situation. Again, I took heat because the district accepted our offer, and teachers said, well, this guy doesn't know how to negotiate. He offered something and they took it. He clearly could have gotten more. I just don't like salary negotiations, and I think that it's a bunch of nonsense that we're going to sit here and I'm going to ask you for 10%, knowing full well there's no way that you're ever going to give me 10%. So I just cut to the chase. With that being said, I'm planning on deploying the same strategy this year just so we don't drag out negotiations over and over again for the sake of me trying to look like I'm fighting for more, even though I know that that's a farce. There is no 10% or 8% or 7%, whatever. So we're going to make an earnest counteroffer based on whatever the district's offer is, and we hope that when we make that offer that the district's team on your behalf are able to accept it so we can get through negotiations in a timely fashion, ratify it, and be able to get people their retro check before the holiday season so they go into the new year with that extra money. So that's really all I had to say. Thank you all very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Katz. I'll now turn the meeting over to Dr. Fenoy, who will provide a brief overview of the district's 2019-2020 budget.
Yes, sir. Before you are 2 agenda items that I am recommending for the millage levies and the 2019-20 district budget. These items are brought forward to comply with truth in millage legislation. Mr. Burke, will you present the 2019-2020 budget?
Thank you and good evening. The board's, this is 10 months in the making, so, like as Mr. Barbieri said, this is not our first meeting, so we're going to be fairly quick with our presentation. We've actually been spending against this budget since July 1st, and it's time to kind of wrap it up and start thinking about next year. We did close the books on FY19 in mid-August, and that has helped us a little bit, as you're going to hear from Ms. Knust in a few minutes. We did pick up some fund balance. Some of that was non-recurring one-time money, so that we have to be careful how we use that. And then we did feel like we had some recurring increases that will help us, and we've been able to bolster the salary reserve a little bit. But with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Ms. Knust, and we'll go through a presentation that we feel is important just to remind people of what the millage rates are and this budget for the public that may be watching at home.
Good evening. Much of this information was already presented as part of the tentative budget hearing, and so if there's any additional questions as we're going through, feel free to stop and ask. So our property values did increase 5.4%, which was the same as they did in the prior fiscal year. The millage rate is 7.164 mills. Much of that millage rate is set by state law, so the board is limited in their authority in order to set the millage rate. That is an increase over the prior year, and the primary reason for that increase is the increase due to the referendum that was approved by the voters. That 7.164 mills is 13.67% greater than the rollback rate. The rollback rate is the rate that we would charge on the current new higher property tax values that would generate the same amount of money as we generated in the previous year. So what does this mean to an average homeowner? So an average homeowner with an assessed value of $225,000 who has homestead exemption will see an increase of $118.40 in their property taxes. So you can see our total budget is $3.5 billion, and that's comprised of all of the general fund, special revenue, debt service, and also capital projects. We do expect to see some growth throughout the year in our special revenue funds, as we will amend the budget as we receive those awards. So we did have an increase in our year-end fund balance of $24.6 million, which is about 1% of our district budget. And it is broken down into both recurring and non-recurring increases. So we had an increase of $6 million in what we call carryovers. So those are state mandated categorical programs that were required to carry over to the schools that still had those funds remaining, as well as other set-asides like after school. We also had an increase in non-recurring revenue as a result of Hurricane Irma. We received federal reimbursements totaling $6 million for expenditures that were incurred during that prior fiscal year. We do expect to get some additional revenue from FEMA, but I can't say that we're going to receive it this year, but still that's considered non-recurring revenue. So we took that $6 million in the carryovers, that goes back into the carryover programs where it was generated. We also took the $6 million in that non-recurring revenue from those the federal reimbursements, as well as some other non-recurring revenue from higher than expected interest income, as well as over collection of revenues. And we set that aside, $8.3 million, to cover additional contracts to make sure that we're complying with the state mandate when it comes to security. Of the remaining amount that's considered recurring, we have $7.6 million that we were able to add to the district salary reserve to increase that to $25 million total. And we set aside $2.7 million because we are seeing additional growth within charter schools. So we were able to balance the budget. Our projected growth is about 750 unweighted FTE by the Florida Department of Education. As of today, we are close to that number. We're not yet at the projected growth, but we do expect to exceed the projected growth through October and also February, and we'll continue to monitor that throughout the year. We're able to increase the salary reserve, like I said, to $25 million. And as a result of the referendum, we were able to add $150 million in teacher recruitment and retention supplements, as well as investments in security initiatives and mental health initiatives. So we're already starting to look ahead to FY21. Your first budget workshop is going to be in December. And looking out to tentative and final budget adoption, tentative adoption will be in July 29th, and final budget adoption, subject to your calendar, is September 9th.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Knust. We will be, we've still got some bargaining to do. We mentioned the salary reserve at $25 million. We're still at the table with SEIU from last year, from FY19, so we have to work towards the settlement. It would come from that same reserve, and then we'll be at the table with our other groups working on the FY20 negotiations. I think we'll have some work to do as far as educating the public on our budget and what we really got out of the state. Our state increases for several years have hovered in the 1% range, and we for the last 4 years, we've been able to get to about a 3% raise, and that took really local initiative and things to find efficiencies and take advantage of savings where we could. And basically, we've played some of those cards over the last 4 years, so I just don't want anybody to think it's going to be easier this year. It's not. The really positive news is around the referendum, but we had a spending plan for that referendum. We've put that money to work, and we're paying our teachers the retention supplements, and we've tripled the budget for our school police and security, and we have now mental health professionals in our school. So I just want to be careful, manage expectations. We're still in Florida. We're still 45th in the country, and we're not rolling in money. But with that said, you've got 2 agenda items in front of you tonight. They each have to be voted on separately, and I'll turn it back to the superintendent for those recommendations.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Am I reading this right?
We need comments from board members at this point. Do any board members will make any comments, any questions? Mr. Superintendent, you want to make your recommendations?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Agenda item B1, I recommend the school board adopt the resolution determining revenues and millages levied for fiscal year 2020. This resolution by the school board of Palm Beach County, Florida, levies a total millage rate of 7.164 mills, which raises $1,453,403,490 in local revenue. The millage is comprised of 3.908 mills for required local effort, 0.008 mills for prior period required local effort adjustment, 0.7480 mills for discretionary operating, 1.5000 mills for local capital improvement, and 1 mill for additional operating funds. This millage is 13.67% more than the rollback rate.
We have a motion. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mr. Shaw. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Superintendent, B2.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item B2, I recommend the school board approve the resolution B2 and adopt the final district summary budget in the amount of $3,607,260 for fiscal year 2020. This includes the district's organizational chart and school board statement of its organization and operation.
We have a motion. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We can adjourn the meeting at this point. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Happy anniversary, Mr. Barbieri.
Thank you.